Greetings, everyone. As most of you know, my name is Noah, aka the Stigma Fighter, which I will gladly explain why I gave myself that nickname. So, tonight, what I'm going to do is basically give everybody like a brief rundown of my story, what motivated me to start TRAN, and what my plans are with TRAN. Talk about briefly about what's going on in this country when it comes to trans rights. But lastly, the protests that Trans Radical Activist Network is sponsoring and trying to organize. So let me just go ahead and just dive right into it. So I actually grew up in Illinois, and I actually want to bring this point up first before I even go any further. Just because somebody lives in a blue state does not mean that as a whole it is a good state. Just like with red states, doesn't mean that they may be perceived as bad, but doesn't mean that they're all bad. And what I mean by that is that there's certain areas that are good and there's certain areas that are bad. It does not make up the general population of that state. I just want everybody to keep in mind of that, and there is a reason I am bringing that up. I grew up in Illinois, and I was a 90s kid, so anything when it comes to the LGBTQIA+, it really wasn't talked about. The only conversations that were taking place was orientation. So we heard about the violence that was going on with the lesbian community, the gay community. I have always known deep down that I wasn't who I really was. I knew I wasn't a girl. I knew I was a boy. I didn't know what that was. It wasn't getting talked about. And it wasn't like I can go to a mental health therapist and be like, okay, what is this? What is this I'm dealing with? It was miserable for me. So my whole childhood was miserable. I've had other traumas happen, but I'm not going to get into those. But the point being is that it's rough. I want people to imagine someone that is going through that exact same thing, where they're really questioning their identity. The last thing you want to do is push people away. There is this argument that we need to let people just explore and identify for themselves who they are. But how can you do that when nobody knows, like, how to educate that and provide a safe, affirming space? That is what is needed to help these individuals. These questions, it's very stressful on the mind, and especially when you don't have a safe and affirming space to talk about it. It not only mentally stresses you, but it physically stresses you. That's why I really emphasize on the mental health aspect when it comes to being trans or being in the LGBTQIA+ as a whole. People talk about the violence that happens, and they should. However, people need to be made aware just how challenging this is and why it's important that we need to have an inclusive society. Granted, society has changed over the years. Like I said, in my time growing up, only lesbian, gays, and bisexuals were getting talked about. Being trans wasn't a thing. And when it comes to my own story with orientation, that was always a challenge for me until I started my transitioning, which I will talk about that here in a little bit. I came out as bisexual when I was about 14, 15. I didn't come out to my family, though, because my family was a very confusing family. My mom was a liberal, my dad was a conservative. And it was really challenging. I didn't know who to talk to. My friends kind of had an idea that I was trans, but, they didn't say anything to me then. When I actually did come out as trans, it was funny because they were like, no, I've always known. And, it's weird. But, that's true friendship. And I wish I would have known more about this growing up. I think I would have avoided a lot of mental challenges. all the times that I tried to like physically try to get out of my own skin. That's a feeling I would never wish upon any of my enemies. No matter how much I hate that person, I would never wish that feeling because it did a lot of mental damage to myself. And what trans youth have right now is something I wish we had back then as well. That's why it is important to make sure that we keep these rights into place. When it comes to my journey being trans, I couldn't come out at all growing up, more so like in a school setting. They didn't have GSA clubs. I actually witnessed a couple of my friends who did come out as lesbians, and they got bullied, and it was horrendous to see. Almost to the point where a couple of them almost dropped out of school. I only told a couple of close friends, like my best friend. I told her about my orientation. I didn't tell her about being trans. When the term transgender came out and I was aware of it, I felt a lot of relief. I finally got the answer as to what was going on, why I didn't feel right in my own body, why I knew I really truly was a boy, and as a man. Right now, there is lack of LGBTQIA plus media out there. It was challenging. And it is part of the reason why I started this network. Again, I will go more into depth, but that is part of the reason I started this. I noticed that we live in a very performative society nowadays. And, they talk about really, as of late on Pride Month, about how highlighting LGBTQIA plus voices are important, which I agree, they are. But they're only highlighted for a short amount of time. The issues no longer get discussed. We just go back to whatever is considered normal these days. We need to talk about what's going on in the community. People don't understand right now our community is divided. It's in trouble. When I came out here to California, it was in 2018. So I actually came here around August of 2018. My brother passed away in January, and he's one of my biggest inspirations. He was the type of happy-go-lucky person who was taken away from us too soon. He had a lot of goals and aspirations in life. He achieved some of them, but not all of them. He had a lot to give. I feel like, in a sense, I'm carrying on his legacy, which is advocating. In 2018, when I moved out here to California, I've had prior experience in mental health. But being in California, this is where my mental health journey really began, because I've gotten exposure to various settings. I came out in October of 2018. I was socially transitioning. I had no access to hormones. I had no access to a therapist because at that time, my insurance didn't kick in. However, what I found was I went to support groups online. That's what helped me through it. The best part about coming out, though, it's like this heavy burden is off your chest and you can finally breathe and relax. I have seen my trans non-binary siblings gatekeep against each other. Like basically shaming them because it doesn't meet their binary standards. And it's forced some of them to go back in the closet. I just want to say that is not okay. And again, it is a really big factor as to why I wanted to start this network. As my co-founder says it perfectly, division is by design. They want us arguing. That's why they drop these little conversations that they know that we're going to engage in, while they sit there and do whatever the hell they want to do. We need to wake up and realize that. I worked as an ABA therapist. I know it's a controversial practice, but I worked in the school setting. I had told my job I wanted to be acknowledged as he, him. And at the time, I didn't have a name. So, I mean, just to be fair. But the principle is I wanted my pronouns respected. I needed that validity. However, I was approached by one of my managers, and he had told me that I need to address my appropriate gender because I'm going to confuse children. I'm going to mind you, my hair was short. I really wasn't having a lot of hair. And as a female at that time, I had PCOS. And just in case if any of you don't know what that is, it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. I was already producing enough testosterone. I was built a little bit more muscular when I was living as a female. So just like a quick PSA, TERFs, women's bodies are unique. They're built uniquely. I will get on the subject of TERFs later, though, because they are a big contributing factor as to why we're divided right now. So I had dealt with that, and needless to say, I was really upset. At that time, I really wasn't confident in my advocacy skills. So in 2019, that's when I started medically transitioning. I started my testosterone in March of 2018, and let me tell you, the upcoming times of like that first appointment, it was scary and exciting for me because it was like, oh my god, I'm actually going to do it. But then again, it's like, I don't know, because even with testosterone, it affects each of us differently. There's some trans men that aren't able to grow this much hair out. Some of them still kind of have the baby face. So that's why it's really unique. The whole journey is unique. If you want to kind of look at it from a medical perspective, that is. It's unique overall. However, once I did my first injection, it was the best feeling in the world. I finally felt free. I could be myself. A month after that, while I was on a break from my other job, I worked at another mental health facility. And basically, what happened, I worked in a co-ed facility, and at first, it really wasn't a big deal. Like, I actually liked it. There was trans youth there. But all of a sudden, they just moved me to an all-girls facility, in which, I did not mind that. But when you're a trans guy, especially, and you like the ones that really want to just transition, like medically transition all the way, it's very triggering for us when it comes to our dysphoria. And starting your transition early, it's very critical to have a supportive environment. My dysphoria was triggered. I did not have my top surgery then. I didn't have my hysterectomy, and I sure as heck didn't have my bottom surgery. So, being in the field of mental health, I hold each professional at a high standard because it is in our ethics that we always must remain competent about cultural issues. I had told her about my concerns, and she literally told me that all trans people need help. I essentially left, obviously, because I wasn't going to take that shit. And overall, that's just been my overall personality. I think starting this journey really brought that out, that I was not going to be silent about that. During my 2019 year, it was big for me. My name was officially changed to Noah. I actually got my top surgery. I got my hysterectomy. It was the best feeling ever. I didn't have any complications. They were all very smooth. I had very good doctors. Well, I will say though, when I got my hysterectomy, I did get misgendered, and repeatedly. I was too doped up. I couldn't even say anything. But I kind of want to go a little bit forward now into 2020. Most people know 2020 was like, and you know, I really don't like Bill Maher, but he does put it perfectly. 2020 was the year of the fucking, because like all masks came off. We saw everything just reveal. There was like moments that were just building up to this, but everything was just bad. We had a pandemic going on, and it was ridiculous. People's mental health was going crazy. People were spreading misinformation. People were trying to put people against each other. Friendships were destroyed. Meanwhile, my journey in mental health, I actually was working at a crisis residential facility where they abused the COVID precautions, by the way. But I was terrorized at this place. I had really good coworkers. That's why I was able to like pull through it and be there as long as I was. It was hard finding a job during that time. I had my manager actually. I had two managers. One of them was licensed, one of them wasn't, but they were both in the LGBTQIA plus community. This therapist, who identified as a lesbian, told me that trans people do not belong in the field of mental health other than being in the chair, and basically told me to give up on my dream as being a therapist. You know, if somebody else said that, I probably would be like, okay, well, like, screw you, you could do something with yourself. But coming from another member of the community, that hurt. Especially when all of us have experienced depression. It just made me question. It's like, well, how dare you say that? And why would you say that? That's not okay. Same with the gay cis man. He told me the same thing. And he tried to also educate me about trans issues. I just want to sit there and say this before I even continue. All of us need to be culturally humbled. We all need to sit down, shut the fuck up, and listen to each other. I cannot speak on behalf of other communities. I can only speak for myself. I have no business talking about other issues that I will truly never understand. People that engage in that type of behavior, that is Karen entitlement syndrome, and I swear y'all need to drop it because this is getting ridiculous. It's annoying, and you know, it drives people away. It makes everybody else look bad. I would also argue 2020 was the year of the Karens too, so I actually joke about it and say it was a Karen-demic. But in 2020, while I was getting terrorized at this job, my dad passed away. It wasn't from COVID, but he passed away the day before Christmas Eve. My job actually forced me to come into work. They didn't give me that 3 days off that was required. Working in mental health, one of the key things that are in our ethics is that you need to be mentally sound. Like, we can all have anxiety, we can have PTSD, we can have anything, but as long as we're mentally sound and on our baseline, in a sense, I was definitely not on mine, but they made me come to work anyway. Honestly, I don't even know how I actually survived that shift. The next day, I started showing symptoms of COVID. And so therefore, that was, at the time, the vaccines weren't out. So I had to quarantine. They took that as an opportunity to go ahead and get rid of me. I tried to fight it. I tried to use my voice. It wasn't strong enough. I even had a whole team behind me, backing me up. They didn't listen to the team members. They went solely on management's words. And with the trans community, so let me go ahead and actually just give you a little bit of psychoeducation. There is a stigma. We're seen as pedophiles. We're seen as monsters. We're seen as unwell. We're seen as like psychotic. We're out to convert people. So when a trans person gets accused of something, they heighten the issue. They make it worse than what it is. They over-exaggerate. When I actually went to this other job in 2021, it was actually going to be my practicum. And I was working at a site, and I totally regret working there, honestly. It was a mental health agency that was run by capitalists. And so it was full of clout chasing. They really wanted to get their name out there. And I mean, I do empathize with that. However, how they were doing it was wrong. I actually, during my first couple weeks there, I actually met the director over there. She is a fully licensed therapist. And she gave us a presentation with me and my coworker about how they would bring more mental health awareness to the Black community. And the way she worded it, she basically was reinforcing another stigma. You got to be mindful with various cultures, there are stigmas already attached to them. So imagine being trans, that's a double stigma. And, you know, my coworker pretty much was agreeing with me, and like I could tell she was totally embarrassed. She had the white savior complex syndrome. This was an old white lady. After the other coworker left, this lady was giving me a tour. She looked at the all gender restroom and she pointed straight in my face and said, "This bathroom was made for you people." If this was outside the professional setting, I promise you it would have gone down a hell of a lot differently. But during that time, my mouth dropped. I didn't even know what to say. We went out to eat the next day, and when I saw her, I just started crying. I started getting triggered. And I actually talked to my supervisor to apologize, and, you know, I would like to get this resolved. The next day, I was let go. I even tried to bring awareness to that HR department, and their excuse was, well, she's old and she really doesn't know any better. Just a PSA, that is a violation of ethics. Look it up. It's in the ACA Code of Ethics. They have to be culturally competent. Then in 2022, this is actually was really the year now. This year has been the year that really pushed me to really get TRAN going. I've been thinking about TRAN for a while. I just didn't know like what I was going to talk about or how to present it. Going through what I have experienced in mental health, what I see on social media, what I have personally experienced on social media when it comes to speech. That was my motivator for TRAN. But 2022, I am going to talk about this very briefly because I don't want to give it too much attention, because there's still childish behavior that's still going on when it comes to this incident. 2022, I want to highly emphasize this. When it comes to trans people and cis people, it has become more of a challenge to establish that trust. It's because there's a lot of them who will sit there and will be your friend. They'll expose your secrets. Like, you'll feel comfortable to tell them your secrets because they present that safe space. But then when you least expect it, they hit you hard in the end. First of all, that is not okay. But that's essentially what I was experiencing in February of 2022. I made some mistakes. And you know, as a trans man, when you're surrounded by cis men, you want to be kind of like one of the guys. I was an idiot. I should have never engaged with the behavior that they were engaging in. It honestly made me sick after the fact. I dealt with a lot of people in that group that were transphobic, and I had gotten a DM basically, and in a subtle way, encouraging me to harm myself. I have felt completely guilty about these incidences. I do take responsibility for the things that have happened. But I was accused of a lot of things that a lot of transphobes like to use. That I am a stalker, I'm a harasser, I'm a manipulator. And that hurt. I had a lot of people turn their back on me. And it was a shock because I opened up to some of these people about intimate things just to be betrayed in the end. There are people out there who still talk about trans rights and how they're important, but yet they're okay with supporting people that are perfectly okay with bullying other trans people. I'm not talking about myself. This happens more common than ever. There are a lot of trans people that do not like to go on Twitter because they've been bullied off. Facebook has become a safe haven. TikTok has even become kind of a safe haven, but not really a safe haven because TikTok likes to suppress the voices of the LGBTQIA+. It's challenging for us to get our voice heard. The person that actually led that was another member of the LGBTQIA+. There were people out there pretending to be trans to escape accountability. And by the way, that is sick. It is one thing to actually, explore and ask questions. But doing it to simply escape about accountability, this is why there is a stigma with trans people. It only takes one fuck up. That fuck up is emphasized, and you know what happens? Violence happens. With the active attacks that have been going on in the trans community, it is important. If you are going to approach them, if they do something wrong, you should approach them in a way where it's not going to invite transphobes to come more violent towards us. If you are for trans rights, then actually acknowledge that we have rights, that we are human beings. Although it was very devastating and I have moved on from this incident, it was still discouraging to me that this was really going on. And shortly after that incident, I actually started my practicum and I worked at another mental health agency. And as of now, I am a practicing student therapist, so I am doing therapy. But during this time, not only was the communication fucked up, but I was never truly acknowledged as a human being. I was always referred to as the other person. I was actually psychoeducating another cis person about the trans community. And, I was explaining to her my experiences. And I did tell her that, I did have some legal issues and I had to sue somebody. Another member of the LGBTQIA+, and actually she was a lesbian, she went and told people that I was out to sue that company. Therefore, this company had mass hysteria. So fast forward, they told me that the reason why they were going to let me go was because of my gender identity and orientation. They said it scared people. Apparently it scared so many people they didn't want to come in the office. They kept saying that they were listening in on my sessions, which is unethical. They had other people spying on me. They made up a bunch of stuff about me. They made me look completely bad when it came to the clients. When it came to discharge, they didn't even let me terminate it. They made it look like that I abandoned them. And that is also the reason why there is a mental health stigma. These people just got thrown right back into the system. It's a repeated abusive cycle. Yes, I was pissed and I did almost give up. However, I have a really good friend of mine who is my co-founder. Sukuru has been amazing. And, when I actually approached him with this idea of starting this network, he was definitely on board. He is my soul brother, which is why I made him my co-founder. He has experienced shit even as an activist. Sukuru, and actually, let me go ahead and talk about the activism part. I got more, I guess if you want to call it politically woke, in 2019, 2020. Like I said before, my dad was a conservative, my mom was a shit lib, and I mean, for a while I was a shit lib, but I still wasn't really actively engaged in politics. I knew the basics, but I really wasn't actively engaged in politics because I always saw politicians as walking dollar signs. I never took any of them seriously. Then came Bernie Sanders, and I was like, oh my God, this dude is amazing. He was the first person that I donated to, and he will be the last person I donate to. I am not going to donate any more money to people who claim that they're with us, but yet don't do anything about it. I want people in the streets demonstrating action. More than just speaking in a microphone. That's not enough for me. You need to earn my vote. I'm not going to go full into political discourse, but all you need to know is that I am far left. And I also want people to acknowledge this too. Stop carrying a label on you. If you are for human rights, then that's what it should be. You are for human rights. You're for nothing else. I want people to have health care. I want people to be able to have a house. I want people to be able to go to work without getting discriminated against. Workers should be taken care of. I believe in things like that. From a psychological point of view, I would encourage you all to look up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Each of those needs are not being met right now in our society. That is part of the reason why I wanted to come up with TRAN. TRAN has been flowing through my veins for a while, but going through all those experiences, meeting up with Sukuru and making sure he was on board, getting a good team together, we decided it was time that we launch a network like this. So we did go through a little bit of a process. We essentially just kept this name, Trans Radical Activist Network. We all should be radical right now. And with my intention with TRAN, it's more than just a podcast. I am trying to get this on the ground at the end of the day. I want to have an organization where we can help with housing, we can help with counseling, we can have a safe space for youth to go to, we can have advocacy services, we can have legal services, a medical clinic to where they can get hormones, food pantries, clothing, you name it. That is what I am trying to build with this organization right now. It's going to take us a little while, I know. But I am not going to stop until this is accomplished. This is a legacy. We need to make a massive change. We need to stop with incremental change. It's getting us nowhere. Having crumbs is not acceptable. We deserve the whole pie. There is a lot of performative allyship that's going on in this country, and honestly, it scares me. They scare me more than anything because they attack you mentally as opposed to physically. But I do want to say it is important that our voices are highlighted. I created this network because I want to give a platform for many in the LGBTQIA plus to use their voice. I do not care which political party that you are in. I just want to hear your voice. Your voice needs to be amplified. Again, using your voice is a powerful tool that we all possess. You combine that with action, you are unstoppable. I know this world is really scary right now, but I encourage you all not to let fear consume you. Living in fear constantly is not going to get us nowhere. The LGBTQIA plus as a whole has been struggling for years. We have made progress, but now things are going backwards. The importance is now to be in the street and using our voice. My biggest inspirations of getting into activism is not only my co-founder, Subaru Force, but my mom as well. My mom used to live in San Francisco. She used to get involved in the protests. Like, she was around when Harvey Milk got assassinated. And, I've admired that. It's kind of sad that she's not for that anymore, but she has actually told me that, Noah, it's okay if you do it. I was actually really humbled by that. Because in today's society, we are experiencing a generational divide. We got one part of a generation that basically is telling us, oh, well, we know best, you guys don't know anything. And they absolutely refuse to see that we have been advanced. And then you got another half of a generation that's all about activism and using their voice. So there's a conflict there. You got one half telling us to shut the fuck up, and then you got us that are sitting there saying, no, we're not going to shut the fuck up. We're going to continue to use our voice. I encourage you all to use your voice. I want everybody to also imagine something too for a trans person. When it comes to that physical stress and mental stress, for me as a trans man, I wake up every morning saying a little prayer. And then I always seem to ask these questions in my head. Am I going to get shit today? Am I going to get discriminated today? Is somebody going to give me the look? It's just, for me, it's like, I just don't know. I always have to kind of mentally prepare myself if it does happen. But my point is, no person should ever have to think that way. We should be able to walk out with a smile and be confident. Trans lives are being lost. 2021 was the deadliest year for transgender people to lose their life. So far this year in 2022, 25 trans lives have been lost. But those are the ones that we know about. Just a reminder, there are probably more. There's a lot of cops that like the dead name. Of course, you also have your typical transphobic family members who refuse to acknowledge you as yourself. So there are probably more. The ones that have taken their own lives, they're not talked about. If you really are for trans rights, we need to be talking about those people. They were people. They are not there to support your performative bullshit. Yes, awareness is good. You need to say their names. Don't ever leave them in the dirt. But actually really research it further. Look for those trans lives that have been lost by suicide. Look more into depth with that. They need their voice heard. even though they're not with us anymore. Most of these trans people that I have noticed have lost their lives. They've struggled with the effects of capitalism. But they also were saying that they were activists. This is what happens when people try to use their voice. We get silenced. I will tell you, I will not allow anyone to silence me. Same with everybody that's been involved with this network. We are unapologetic. We do not care. We are going to use our voices. What Trans Radical Activist Network currently offers right now is content. Me and Sukaru do the trans files. We also do up close and personal. Me and my friend J-Dog, we do happy hour. J-Dog is also going to be releasing a gaming stream, and he's also going to release his version of Up Close and Personal next year, where that is more focused on LGBTQIA+ youth. I encourage others to please join this network. Even allies. We definitely could use you. We need your support. We need to keep spreading awareness. Because right now, we are currently in trouble. With Marjorie Taylor Greene's fucking garbage ass bill, with trying to basically make it illegal for people to be trans and reinforcing harm, mental harm on children and adults. It is getting scary. There are many debates if it's going to pass. For me personally, I don't think it's going to pass. However, I mean, it is election year and people are losing their seats. And it does scare me and frighten me that it could get passed. Because this system, like I said before, this is by design. It is by design. It's a cat and mouse game. They give you a little bit of cushion of safety, but then it gets taken away. Then it goes back to it. Why are we doing that? Can we all agree that we are all human beings and we all deserve to breathe? We all deserve liberation. And a PSA to evangelical Christians, I suggest that you all need to go reread the Bible and stop twisting scripture to justify your hate and ignorance. And actually don't even call yourselves Christians anymore, actually. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because a lot of people don't know this about me. Some people do. But I am spiritual, and I used to say that I was a Christian. Evangelicals ruined the term Christianity for me. I practice love and acceptance and to not judge others because it is not my place to judge. That is how society needs to be. It is not your place to judge. If there's things that you truly don't know about, don't talk about them. Humble yourselves and get educated. Listen to others. The trans community is not a category. Please do not put us in one. I want to go ahead and actually share with you guys about this protest so you guys are aware with what I'm talking about. So the one that I'm going to be attending to is it's called the National Day of Action to End Violence and Genocide on Transgender People. This is going to be on October 1st, 2022, which will be a Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And this is the one that's going to be in downtown Los Angeles, Grand Park to Pershing Square. It's going to be fun. And I want everybody to understand, if you all want to get involved in this protest, we are trying to create a nationwide protest. Please contact my co-founder, Sukaru Force. He is an amazing activist. And I'm also going to encourage you all to please check out the episode of the Trans Files, the recent one, where we talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene's garbage bill. He does an amazing presentation on how we can organize and protest. I just want to say, in close, I call myself a stigma fighter because stigmas are killing us right now. You know what helps combat a stigma is by educating. The time to be radical is now. The time to pressure people is now. Trans rights are human rights. We are not a species. Do not be afraid to engage in uncomfortable conversations. I know they suck. I dread having them too, but they must be had. Don't let depression keep you in a bad place. Use that as a motivator to keep fighting. Same with hate. Any hate that any of my trans siblings or any of my LGBTQIA plus siblings experience, use that as a motivator to keep fighting. Please join us on the streets on October 1st. And I want to thank everybody who is tuning in tonight. I appreciate that you all had the chance to actually listen. Please like, share, and subscribe. We're not only on YouTube, but we are also on Anchor, Spotify, Google, Amazon, and Apple. Please check us out. Let's get that message out there. Let's go out in the street and kick ass. Please continue to educate others. And again, do not be afraid to use your voice. Much love to you all.